Shall we start? Yeah. Professor Patrick Mendis, Mrs. Antonina Mendis, a dear colleague, those who are joining in person as well as from joining from our overseas mission abroad, Ayubowan, and very good morning to all of you. It is indeed my great pleasure to welcome Professor Patrick Mendis, distinguished professor who flew from the USA for participations presenting the series of lectures, including today's program in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. For this program, we invited in person to be here from our new colleague who joined last month as Sri Lanka Foreign Service members 2024. I officially introduced them to our colleague overseas missions. Welcome to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to the diplomatic service of Sri Lanka. Since they have been 6 weeks in induction program since last month, and they will end up with today with this special lecture, sir. So hope they will get maximum benefit from this interactions with very distinguished professor from USA. So actually this program is opportunity to thank His Excellency Ambassador Mendis Washington DC, who initiated this program after had a meeting with Professor Mendis. He informed Foreign Ministry to organize this special lecture and invited him today's 4 presentations. Professor Mendis will deliver on today about Sri Lanka's geostrategic challenges and Sino-American competitions in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. He has vast professional and academic knowledge and experience. I hope our colleagues will be enjoy and getting maximum benefit from his vast knowledge. We are actually lucky enough to have him here today, since distinguished professor from having a lot of experience in all over the world. And thank you very much, sir, on behalf of Secretary and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and all participants today in this room, as well as our colleagues in overseas missions. Thank you very much, and really appreciate. I know that you are having very busy schedule since you are having only few days to stay in Sri Lanka, engaging in different institutions, taking your valuable time today in the morning. Thank you very much again. And of course, before I handed over the microphone to Professor, let me also read this brief introductions. It's not, of course, I think I have seen that the biggest CV I have seen from yours is 14 pages. Then we can understand that the work that he has done in professional career as well as his academic. And also take this opportunity, Madam Jindabre, Madam Antonia, sorry for my mistake if I wrong misspelling. Thank you so much. He also assistant professor from the University of Krakow. Also, I think she also will interact with you all during the question and answer sessions, having a lot of experience in especially the South Asia, South region, especially Chinese. I mean, professionally, that she will explain during the interactions. So while let me, before handing over to microphone, let me read Professor Mendis' brief introductions. Dr. Mendis is an award-winning American diplomat, military professor, author, and philanthropist. The Biden-Harris White House appointed Professor Mendis as the presidential advisor on national security education and Department of Defense. During the Obama administration, he served as a commissioner to UNESCO at the U.S. Department of State under Secretary Hillary Clinton and the John Kerry. Prior to joining the State Department under Madeleine Albright, Dr. Mendis served as the military professor at NATO and the Indo-Pacific Command of the Pentagon during the Clinton administration. Under Secretary Colin Powell, Professor Mendis served as the Secretary and Director of the State Department Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. He started his government service as a staff of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee during the Reagan administration. Currently, Dr. Mendis is also a distinguished visiting professor of transatlantic relations at the University of Warsaw in Poland, as well as inaugural Taiwan chair of the distinguished visiting professor of international relations at the Jagiellonian University of Krakow, Poland. Before returning to Europe, he was a visiting professor for global affairs and national Chanchi University in Taiwan and the distinguished visiting professor of Sino-American relations at the Yantian Academy of Peking, University of Beijing. Professor Mendis has also previously lectured at over 25 Chinese academic and universities. And the President of the World University Service of Sri Lanka, for which he was recognized with the General Sir John Kalawala Defence University Award. With Ambassador Chanta Dhanapala, Professor Mendis served as the first youth ambassador of Sri Lanka to the United Nations and its International Year of Youth. For his services to Sri Lanka, and global education, Professor Mendis was recognized with the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Sri Lanka Foundation of Los Angeles, California. Professor Mendis had authored more than 200 books, journals, articles, newspaper columns, and research papers. He is serving as the advisor to Harvard International Reviewer and the founding chairman of the Educate Sri Lanka Foundation, among others. The who's who in America and the authoritative dictionary of biographies presented him with the distinguished Albert Nelson Lifetime Achievement Award for his leadership in international education and global diplomacy. Professor Mendis earned his first class honors BSc degree in business administration and economics from University of Jawaharlal, again master in international development foreign affairs from the Herbert Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and PhD in geography in applied economics from the University of Minnesota. Professor Mendis is an alumni of the Harvard Executive Leadership Program at the John F. Kennedy School of Government as a faculty. Professor Mendis served as a Rajavali Senior Fellow at the Ash Center of Diplomatic Government and Innovation at the Harvard Kennedy School, as well as Associate in Research at the Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies in Harvard University. He has established the Practice Mendis Prize in the University of Jawaharlal, the Edward Legislative Award at the University of Minnesota, and the Millennium Award Leaders and the Service at Harvard University. Professor Mendis traveled, lived, and worked in more than 145 countries and territories, visiting all 50 US states, and traveled to all 34 provinces and the special administrative region of China, including Hong Kong, Macau, Nangxia, Tibet, and Shenzhen. He and his wife, Dr. Antonia Mendis, live in Washington, D.C. And this is actually brief. It's very difficult to brief one page summary from his CV. Of course, our pleasure, sir, inviting you today for this book. And over to you, sir.
Thank you, Jimanti. Thank you very much. Your kind introduction, and also I wanted to thank Sri Lankan ambassador in Washington, Ambassador Mahinda Samarasinghe and his colleagues, especially Rohana and Chatur, for arranging this one with our good friend here. And this is not the time I'm been to your foreign ministry. I've been here several times. During the even first, your foreign minister was ACS Hamid, when Jayanta Dhanapala was the foreign secretary, and whom I had the privilege to serve in the United Nations with him and several other ambassadors during his time. And given that background, I am very honored to be here, and I'm also delighted that Sri Lankan Ambassador Mahinda asked me to come here with my wife. We had a nice meeting in last February to organize this. He came up with this idea. I'm very grateful to him and his very able team in Washington, D.C. And hello, Rohana, and also Chatri, I know you're awake and watching me. Let me directly go into what we need to be talking about, given the time schedule here. In essence, I want to talk about Sri Lanka's geographic challenges and Sino-American competition in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. As Vijayanti explained to you, I traveled all the 50 states in the US and the 30 provinces of China and taught in 27 Chinese universities. So I am still a student of American history and Chinese history, and also Sri Lankan history too. So given that, look for the future, what kind of competition we are going to have by looking at the back. The farthest back you can see, then you can see the farthest forward. That Winston Churchill said that. Given that, you probably heard about Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte said about China, let China sleep. When she wakes up, she is going to shake the world. And you may know in recent years, some scholars and strategists ask the question, when China rules the world, what kind of world we are going to have? Given that background, I wanted to share with you, where does Sri Lanka fit in into all this thing? What do you care? You know, before Portuguese, Dutch, and British came to this country, 1505, the Middle Kingdom pretty much ruled the Asia, China. It was the most prosperous, most cosmopolitan country. It has an old civilization that goes back to 5,000 years plus, compared to, according to Mahavansa, 2,500 years of this island paradise. So given that, let me go back to this, why Sri Lanka is so important. Not because of it is the host nation of Buddhism, the protector and promoter and depository of the Theravada tradition, but because it's a geographic location between East and the West. Sri Lanka has never been an island. Sri Lanka is connected to the rest of the world through the Indian Ocean from the east, from the west. Please do not think Sri Lanka is an island. You are alone here. You are not. You are part of the world from the very beginning of the history of this island nation. So given that, Sri Lanka's recorded history talks about Anuradhapura Kingdom, the first capital of Sri Lanka for 1200 years until my Narua became capital. I was born in Sri Lanka, Polonnaruwa. So I'm very proud to say I'm a Polonnaruwa Lamaya. So there, in the Anuradhapura Kingdom, the King Batika Abhaya, 20 BC to 9 AD, was the king of Sri Lanka. During that time is the one time that started the formal connections with China through commercial, diplomatic, and cultural exchanges. Why it is a connection? Because China is the one who connects us through different ways. One is the Northern Silk Route that started from Xi'an. Actually, that's where my wife started her Sino journey. She speaks Chinese as well as Hindi. So she is on the capital of Xi'an. Actually, that is also the capital I first started teaching 20 plus years ago. So Xi'an was the capital of Middle Kingdom, and there are several others afterward, after the Nanjing and then capital back to Beijing. So that is the time when Xi'an was the capital. During the Tang dynasty, which is about similar to the Anuradhapura Yuga, Anuradhapura time, it was called the cosmopolitan China. They have exchanges with the West, all this through the Silk Road. And then there was much later during the Ming dynasty, Admiral Chung He, whom you heard about, came to Sri Lanka. Out of 7 journeys, he was here 6 times. And you probably know they took over the King Alakeshwara from Kotte Ming War, taken him back to Nanjing court. We'll talk about that one if you're interested in later on. So that was the southern route, Maritime Silk Road. That was the Ming dynasty. So now you can see there are 2 dynasties. One is the Tang dynasty going from the north, from the Xi'an to the west, and the southern dynasty is during the Ming dynasty, Maritime Silk Road. This highly developed. Think about the dynasty. The Admiral Chung He came to Sri Lanka to gold. He has over 300 huge ships. Remember, this is almost 100 years before Christopher Columbus came to America. Their maritime supremacy was so high, they had the colonial powers from the Europe. That's the downward of the Chinese kingdom or influence in the region. So then came, during this time, King Batika Abhaya's time, he sent emissaries, diplomats to Rome, and they had a diplomatic relation with the Roman Empire Claudius. And then he has emissaries carrying gifts from Sinhala kings to China and back and forth. It is called the tributary system, exchange of gifts in the first century on. I don't want to go into details about which king gave what, and I wanted to highlight about Parakambahu's time. During that time, King Parakambahu actually employed Chinese soldiers to protect Chinese ships going from Trincomalee, China Bay, carrying Polonnaruwa rice from the Mahavali River to the China Bay, to Bengal Bay, and to the China. And they were attacked by piracy in Myanmar, Burma. So in protect them, King Parakambahu even used Chinese soldiers. It was according to Sri Lankan chronicles and the history books. So given that, Sri Lanka has a remarkable exchange both in the diplomatic, commercial, and military and cultural exchange, largely cultural, which I call it is a Buddhist diplomacy. I have written about it long time ago, even long before the Lotus Tower was built here, because I was teaching in China at that time. So this Buddhist diplomacy is the foundation of these two countries, the Great Kingdom of the Middle Kingdom or the Sri Lanka's Anuradhapura Kingdom. Through the Buddhist diplomacy, you probably heard that that's the king I mentioned earlier, century AD, and then the century, 4th century, because of the Sri Lanka's diplomatic relation with the East and the West, Chinese Buddhist monk came to Sri Lanka during the Western Han Dynasty. And his name, you probably all know, Faxian. You call him Fahian or Fahian Rock. That my wife and I went over there to see the Lukuhamaduro the other day on the way back from the KDU. And because he's an old friend of mine, I went there. So I want her to see the Fahian rocks. So we were there, and we are going to see the Abhayagiri monastery in few days' time. So here, Abhayagiri, there are few monasteries at that time. Abhayagiri was the key depository of Buddhist knowledge, and then Mahavihara, and then Chetararame. They are all located nearby in Anuradhapura. And here, Faxian came to Sri Lanka in 1410, he stayed in 1413. He came to Gaul, went to Anuradhapura, climbed Sri Pada, went back and gave gift to the Kovil in Ratnapura, and then to Pahiyangala, and went all the way to Anuradhapura. And he stayed there, learned about the Buddhism. Why they wanted to know about the Buddhism? Didn't they know about it? Yes, they did. But the Tripitaka was fragmented because that is coming from the northern India and Tibet. It's a Mahayana tradition. They wanted to understand the real Buddhism, why they are fragmented. So he came over here to the gaps. So he took some 3,000 some books they copied and taken back to China. So there, I went to his temple. I traveled where Faxian walked from Xi'an to all the way to the corner where he crossed the border. So I was fascinated I wanted to go on the same journey, but train and cars and airplanes, but not like he came with the tigers and other animals. So having said that one, he has written about Buddhist kingdom of the lion. This is what this country is called, Buddhist kingdom of the lion. Then his writing during that time, this is the 5th century now, and then came He studied in Anuradhapura, learned from the Buddhist monk. And then Tang dynasty, the dynasty which I mentioned earlier, he was sponsored by the Tang dynasty and he wanted to come to Sri Lanka, but he ended up in Varanasi. At that time, Sri Lankan Buddhist monk living in Varanasi and the traders from Sri Lanka told the Swanson, please don't go to Sri Lanka, there are domestic violence. So he did not go. However, it is remarkable, he has written on Sri Lanka's history from the eyewitness records of the Buddhist monk, Sri Lankan Buddhist monk living in Varanasi. He was even talking about Padmaraga race coming out from the Buddha's truth relic. And he was talking about having a Bhikkhuni order, female Buddhist order in Sri Lanka. That inspired, when he returned, that inspired China's one and only empress, Wu Tixian. Wu Tixian was a female monk before she became empress. And she wanted to have Sri Lankan nuns come to China. She invited Sri Lankan Buddhist nun. She started the Buddhist Bhikkhuni order. Because she was a previous year Bhikkhuni, she became an empress. Actually, she was very ruthless emperor. That one, I went to a place in Liaoning, another capital during the Tang dynasty. So you can see there centuries later, their connection is continuing. This is what I call the civilizational state. If you look at the Sri Lankan history, you can see the similarity. You can tell who is the king onward because of the King Dhatusena and his sponsorship of right in the Mahavansa and the later Chulavansa. So given that one, these two civilizations has some similarities, some foundation. What is the foundation? The gift of this nation, Buddhism, that attracted China. Now you can say, I know why they would have a lotus tower, the symbol of Buddha. I will tell you a little bit that one if you're interested in how the concept came around. So given this one, he documented Sri Lanka's Buddhist activities, which we didn't know we had more than his book about it. And he also called Sri Lanka the Deeper, the island of Dharma. So even though he didn't come to Sri Lanka, it seems like he knew Sri Lanka more than any Sri Lankan historian ever wrote about it. And given that one, that is that time period, the Tang dynasty, Buddhist influence came into, foundation was built here. Then came one during the Admiral Chung He's time to come to Sri Lanka during the Ming dynasty. Emperor Li John, emperor's name, Yongle, Empress Yongle, the Ming dynasty. So he sent Admiral Chung He 7 times. The reason is they wanted to create this, this is not the Indian Ocean, this is their Western Ocean. Why Western Ocean? They have a mythical understanding, this is the middle kingdom of China, they have a North Sea, which is there is no, this is a mythical. and they have East China Sea, they do, and then the South China Sea, and they don't have a West China Sea. This is their West China Sea. It was written in their poetry and literature. So China wants to create the bringing back this ancient civilization back to the forefront, because they want to bring that what President Xi Jinping calls the rejuvenation of the Chinese culture and heritage and Chinese nation. So now you can see what it means when President Xi Jinping talk about rejuvenation of Chinese nation. Why Sri Lanka is the crown jewel of Chinese foreign policy. So here, Admiral Chung Ho came here, and you know the only war they had was Ming Kotte War. You can Google it up in Wikipedia or any other records. They talk about Ming Kotte, why Alakeshwara was taken away and sent it back afterward. When King Parakamba VI was the king when he came back, and he didn't have any power to rule that time. So given that one, you can see the Ming dynasty, they wanted to call this one the China's Western Ocean. I give a number of talks in India. They're not very happy about it. Change in the Indian Ocean. Remember, Indian Ocean is the only ocean in the world after a country. There is no Atlantic, there are no Pacific, but there is an Indian Ocean. So China said, we are going to change it. Here we go. When they rule the world. And you're probably happy too, because you don't have a Sri Lankan. Why do you call the Indian Ocean around Sri Lanka? It is better to call Indian Ocean, am I right? Indonesia would be happy too. They wanted to rename the Indian Ocean Indonesian Ocean. They would be happy. So China would make a lot of friends. Not the Indian domination, but the Western Ocean come to. Sri Lankan would be happy, am I right? So given that one, you can see how things are working. There is a psychological warfare, cognitive warfare is also going on underneath. I just wanted to bring up to you because you are the future of this nation. You need to know what history, what is truth, why it is happening this way. The history, you cannot see the future. If you do not know the great brave woman like Vihara Mahadevi, you don't know how to live for the future. If you didn't know the Tutugamunu, you didn't know how to protect this nation. You need to know the history. If you do not know the history, you don't have the future. Given that one, China live in history. China living in the history. So if you were to go to the Sri Lanka's museum, National Museum, you can see the gold tripod. It is written in 3 different languages, Persian, Chinese, and Tamil. Why Tamil? No Sinhalese there. Because the king was the Tamil, Alakeshwara. You remember that time country was divided to the Jaffna, separate Raigama and the Ruhuna and so forth. I'm not going into the Sri Lankan history because it takes another time for you to know about it. But this is Admiral Chung Ho put that one in these 3 languages. He said, China wants to build a world, peaceful world built on trade. So their mission is trade. When you talk about the trade brings people together, not the religion, not the ethnicity, not even your language. It does not bring people together. It actually divert people. Sinhala people don't talk to the Tamil people or to the Muslim religion, don't talk to any other. But a trade brings people together. You eat Muslim food in the morning, lunch is a Chinese food, and dinner is Sri Lankan food, but still you're Sri Lankan. So trade brings people together. That was exactly the philosophy of America's founding. American presidents, especially Thomas Jefferson, our founding father, third president of the United States after George Washington and Adams, he said, trade with all, entangle with none. So why I am saying this one? Because the two great powers, China and United States, has the same philosophy about how to bring the nation to the greatness through trade. Was Sri Lanka be an island if you didn't have a trade? Trade not in the sense of goods and services, but a trade in knowledge, Buddhist knowledge going back and forth. Buddhism come to this country, it's a trade. You got the knowledge about the Buddhism. You have a diplomatic relation with the Rome. It's a trade, exchanging ideas. I'm coming over here, exchanging ideas. It's a trade in knowledge. When you think about that one, America's founding and the Chinese ideas of trade is the fundamental to understand our world. That is why we cannot separate, we cannot divorce America and China, because they are connected with trade. Even President Donald Trump's time, he wanted to cut off trade. During that time, if you look at the trade relation, import and export between China and the US has increased, to make my point. So therefore, these two countries have a trade is the fundamental to their human progress. Both countries agreed. Why I am telling you that one? Focus on trade. If Sri Lanka want to be a great nation, look at Dubai. Dubai wants to be the knowledge hub because they don't have anything else, because they wanted to have all the American other professors come and have all the universities there. So my thinking is, my idea is for you to think about, you are also the agents of trade. You are diplomatic aspect of it. You are the promoter of the nation, island. So therefore, you are part of this larger scheme of things, what Sri Lanka should become. So given that one, now China wants to create this, bring back the ancient glory that they had it 500 years ago prior to colonialism of the West. So President Xi Jinping, 2013, introduced this One Belt, One Road initiative. Now they call it the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. And in that one, what did they do? They took that great Chinese civilizations, Tang Dynasty from the north, Silk Road, and the Ming Dynasty from the south, combined together, then created a brilliant idea to bring this Chinese greatness forward. Why didn't Chinese use the Yuan dynasty or the Qing dynasty? They selected these two dynasties. Why not Yuan? Yuan is a Mongolian, it's not Chinese. They didn't use the last dynasty, the Qing dynasty. Why? Because it is not Chinese either. It is Manchurian. So they Chinese civilization. What China represented in the Tang dynasty, it is the northern Silk Route. And the naval supremacy, maritime supremacy is represented by the Admiral Cheng He's time, Ming dynasty. So they combine, telling you the China's vision, China's history. You better know it. We have such a strategy for Sri Lanka. Ask yourself. Get the Dutugamunu and Parakambau together. Parakambau can make this country most prosperous and export rice again. You have to have some kind of intellectual brain trust in order to come up with it and try to get all the brain trust abroad back home. That's what our ambassador is trying to do from Washington, because he recognized it. And here, the northern route is the Belt Road, and the then southern route is the 21st century Silk Road. Even though this words are translation is kind of funny, but it is a Belt and Road initiative that guide the world. Why Sri Lanka? As I mentioned, they wanted to have Sri Lanka because without Sri Lanka, they cannot accomplish any of those things. Because it has a long history, 2,500 years history with Sri Lanka and China. So here, let me explain, very highlighted. I don't want to go to all the detail about it. They came, built a Hambantota, want to have a supreme. They got it and give the country to 99 years. I was told we were nearby there. We cannot go into, even to Sri Lankan military cannot go in. I was with your armed forces. So we cannot go there, it's not ours. Here we go. And this happened also the Colombo Port CPC. That's the other CPC. It's not the Communist Party of China, but it's a Colombo Port Authority. Why is it a hidden message? They're telling you something that you don't know. There are two CPCs. One is in Sri Lanka, another one is in China. Here we go. I can go to the numerology and astrology or their own system of the design of the Colombo Port City, how the main access is directly to the Beijing, and why they have a square and compass on the design. If you look at the satellite map, it will tell you about it. That's a different talk, okay? So here we go. You have a two CPCs, one for China, one for you. And here, the second one is the Lotus Tower. Now they neutralize the Buddhist monks. They're not going to talk against this. Am I right? Who is going to talk about against Buddhism, the symbol of lotus? Even though Lotus Tower or Lotus Sutra is not part of the Theravada tradition. It's a Mahayana tradition, 3 sutras under Lotus Sutra. I don't want to go into detail because I gave that talk into the World Buddhist Congress in Bangkok about the meaning of Lotus Sutra and why is it differ from the Theravada tradition and why is it the primary driving intellectual force for the Mahayana tradition. Now you heard about when I talk about aha, Professor Mendis is talking about our Samantha Bhadra Hamaduru in Kurunagala. Think about that one, what is going on there. So even that one, this is the CPC. Look at this as the axis and all these things, how they design, and what is the acreage and hectareage, the number, what that represent. It's a part of the numerology. In the Taoist, I studied Taoist and Confucianism and Buddhism, both in the Mahayana tradition and Theravada tradition, because I'm a student of everything. You tell me about what these flowers is, I really want to know what these flowers are. So that is why when I was in down south, I want to go to the botanical garden of the dry zone because I want to know all the Sri Lankan trees. Because I grew up in a little farm in Polonnaruwa. So I was fascinated by everything because I grew up with the Buddhist monks for 5 days and 2 days with the Catholic priest, just because I was born into a Buddhist mother, the Kandyan, a descendant of the last king. And the Catholic father from Jayala. They settled in Polonnaruwa during the colonization process after the D.S.A. Nanayakas, Dudley Senanayakas time. They are the pioneers of Polonnaruwa. So I was born there. So I grew up with the best of the both worlds, Buddhist and Catholic. So therefore, I was fascinated with everything. I wanted to know about everything. I wanted to be a student in my whole life. So given this one, what you see is this represented, there are a lot of hidden messages going through that you don't know. What you don't know is not good. For them, it is good. Because you don't know. You think you know. I always didn't. I know myself. So I want to myself. I have 24 thesis. Want to all the drive to all the 50 states. I wanted to see myself. So do not believe it. Like Alara Kalam Sutra said, go and find it. Okay. And then the last one is the gift to President Maithripala Sirisena. So Maithriyaya went over, Maithriyaya, I mean, president, because we grew up in Polonnaruwa, okay, with Dudley and others. So he was given this gift to kidney. I know about this one. It is a real problem when I was growing up. I have this urinary problem because drinking that water. So it is a huge problem with the farmers. This is absolutely a treasure to given to this to Polonnaruwa. So given that one, you can see this four symbol, not only symbolic, this is as a practical values. For example, I can speak for the Polonnaruwa side. And also the look at the Lotus Tower. It is a symbol for the Sri Lanka right now, and also the Colombo Port Authority, Colombo Port City, and also the Hambantota. That signifies how much influence China has on this country. Why? The history matters. Because they want to bring that history. They cannot go China itself, its history. They want to bring Sri Lanka with it. Given this one, this region is now increasingly become militarized because of the Chinese influence and the Indian influence and the US influence, and now Japan. You probably heard yesterday, which is yesterday was Monday, the Quad people, Quad partners met in Tokyo, the foreign ministers of the US, Australia, South Korea, and Japan. And then previous day, Sunday, the 2+2 met, which means the defense secretaries and the foreign secretaries, foreign ministers of Japan and US. Why? They are very concerned about China's aggressive behavior in the region, not only in the East China Sea, South China Sea, but in the Indian Ocean. Because now you are kind of hooked into the bad situation, national debt, cannot get out of it for a long time to come. So you have to be subservient to the other countries, especially to what China said, and also to the IMF and the World Bank, and the other countries, Japan also, and India. Given this one, let me kind of explain to you why China has this strategy. There are two bookends to China's short-term strategy. One is Taiwan. They claim after the Qing dynasty, last dynasty, they think they controlled Taiwan, but they never did. And they think that Taiwan is a part of China. They don't want to recognize this practice in democracy, shining democracy in Asia. And that's where I met my wife. And we were fellows of the Taiwan fellows of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we taught and studied, traveled around, in addition to our studies in China. So there, China wants to take Taiwan back. They think Taiwan is part of province. The President Xi Jinping said they are going to take it back, if possible, by force. So that created huge tension. Now people ask, today Ukraine, tomorrow Taiwan. And when the Ukraine war is over, they probably ask, today is Taiwan, tomorrow Sri Lanka. So given this one, what is their strategy? They wanted to control the East China Sea. That's where the Taiwan. And then north of Taiwan, there is another island, disputed island called Senkaku Island, Yuan. And it is disputed between Japan and China. That disputed island also created a problem with the national psychic of Japan. If they were to rule, they will lose this landmass. There are not people living in Senkaku Island. But they have that fear. That is why these defense ministers and foreign ministers and getting together, and they are beefing of the military presence and the economic relation and doing of the advanced technology exchange and cooperation. So then there is a concern about the militarization of South China Sea. You know, China has built, militarized all the islands, 11 islands in South China Sea. When President Barack Obama asked, what are you going to do with this artificial island? I have seen satellite pictures, you are militarizing it. President Xi at that time said, no, we are not militarizing. But matter of fact, while he was talking, they were militarizing. So then came the we cannot trust Chinese. So this is the another U-turn is the US-Taiwan-China relation because it cannot be trusted. So then come to this is the first part of the Chinese strategy, okay? South China Sea and East China Sea, because they are focusing Taiwan. Then come to the next one is to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a different strategy. It's not a warfare or anything, but it is the commercial. But eventually, I think it will become like Djibouti or in the military base Hambantota, okay? Because they have the access to Hambantota for the dual purposes, both civilian and military purpose. So at the same time, you probably know AXA agreement between the US and Sri Lanka. That means all the airports, there are 11 airports in Sri Lanka. The US government can access land and take off the planes from here. So there is the balance of power going on here as well as in the other countries, because the US has, I think, more than 120 plus countries AXA agreements. Okay, one is signed by your previous Defense Secretary Gotabaya and renewed under Maithripala Sirisena for 10 years and so forth. So given this, it is Sri Lanka is, even though you don't know it, is being militarized. So Sri Lanka's history is different. It was 2,500 years history than less than 200 history of China's at Taiwan during the latter part of the Qing dynasty. Two different strategies, but they are critical to their power projection in the world. So then the third part coming into and I think Professor Antonina can talk about that one. She's the expert of China and India, about the third element, that is the Himalaya and India. Why in the world they are fighting in no people in the Himalayan mountain, even no sheep even. So they are fighting for the borders. She will explain to you in the question and answer session why that water comes to India and also to Bangladesh. So they have a different set of strategies. She will can expound on that one a little bit later if you are interested in, because it is about Tibet. Because all the major rivers in the world, the most important ones, coming from the Tibetan plateau. If you control water, you control Southeast Asia, Mekong River and the Brahmaputra River, millions of people. So now America is fully aware of it. US government even passed the Tibetan Act and also supported the Mekong River Valley Delta, supporting intelligence to those countries and to India. And US signed 4 agreements with India, both cyber security, cyber information sharing, intelligence sharing, and so forth. Because of this, now China wants to do that one. Now they want to get the India away from Sri Lanka. So they are looking at their border. Now they can do everything in this little island of paradise for them. It is working. It is absolutely working. This strategy is put in Sri Lanka and Taiwan as a bookend, one into the another end. At the Horn of Africa, Djibouti, and all the way to Red Sea, we can talk about that one, and we both wrote an article. You can Google it up, Dragon and Phoenix Strategy of China, in the Indian journal, Australian Outlook, and it was republished by the several naval institutes around the world, translated to languages. So this is what is the state of what China is doing to India, Taiwan. This is very comprehensive. So given this one, this is our article. I wanted to go very briefly because of the time factor. They are trying to show the world they are in charge of not only the maritime, but also the air. That's what we call the Phoenix strategy. The other one, Dragon, is the Blue Dragon strategy, which is with the water, not only the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific Oceans, but also Brahmaputra River. Okay, here, AI space, China sent a balloon, spy balloon, over Alaska and Montana. It crossed over to the Atlantic, and the US military shot it down. It's sending a message to America. We have the power. And then come with the supersonic technology. They say they have supersonic technology. They think which US doesn't have. That's a different story. You can read about it. And then other one is around Taiwan. They have exercise in both maritime and AI space control around Taiwan. So this is their strategy in the space. And this would happen. Then we talk about this strategy. We divide it into 7 components. We call the midlife strategy of China, which is Phoenix and Dragon strategy. And it's also how China is going to win the war without fighting one. That one you need to remember. China is not going to have a direct war in America. They would have a proxy war, whether it's Taiwan, even Ukraine, or even if it is in Sri Lanka. It is a proxy war. They are not going to have a direct encounter. Because why? Because they're both going to lose, or other is going to lose. Okay. So therefore, this is what this is a midlife strategy. It is not a midwife, okay? It's a thing. It's not a midwife trying to operate and take the baby out, okay? And this is a midlife. It is the middle of the time that China is exercising its power. You heard about midlife crisis, men and women going through that one. So this is there in the middle of that one, not a crisis, but a strategy. So we came up with this idea, try to explain to the audience, global audience, what China is doing. Try to win the war without having any battles. So one is a military aspect of it. And then the second one is called that's the M stand for. I stand for intelligence, and D stands for diplomacy. You heard about wolf warriors of China. It is wolf warriors are very active here, even in this building. I can tell you that one. Then the other one is legal, and other one is called identity, and other one is last two is called the financial, final one is called the economics. So these are all at work, even in Sri Lanka. The thing is, you don't know. It reminds me what President Harry S. Truman said after the World War II. President Harry S. Truman said, only thing you don't know in the world is the history you don't know. So if you want to know, learn about the history, then you know everything. So given that one, the military aspect of is they employ dual use technology for military and civilian purposes. You can see in the Hambantota, okay? And second one is they are using the supersonic aircraft technology, telling the world that they have that technology. They have 3 aircraft carriers. America has many deployed around the world. Now they have 3. First one is called Leonin, which they got it from Ukraine and refurbished, and they deassemble and reassemble. And the second one they call the Shandong province. Shandong. Why Shandong? Because they are sending a message to Taiwan, no, Japan, because Japan was ruled by Shandong province was ruled by Japan and also Germany. So they are sending these another hidden messages within the naming the aircraft carriers even. And then the other one is Fujian. Why Fujian? Why didn't they put it Shanxi province, Henan province, Guangdong province? No, Fujian. Why? Fujian is next to Taiwan. Okay? They have every single things that China does. It has a symbolic message in the underlying message going on. Okay, this is what China is called comprehensive strategy. Other one is the intelligent. Intelligent here, they wanted to get the best out of everything. They even ask, trying to get the Chinese diaspora to spy on Chinese government. Even you probably know in the US, Chinese students are being monitored by the FBI. Okay, because they are concerned by the US government, there are Chinese students, and even if you look at Australia, Australian government is concerned about it, even though Australian foreign minister is a Chinese origin. So given this one, they are looking at every single aspect to their own benefit. Okay, and then they are also lobbying for anything policies that are favorable to China. And then they have a cyber espionage, and also they also conduct the misinformation and disinformation and interfering with the elections. I am not going to go with to the background of Sri Lankan previous elections and who influenced what and who, when, and how. You probably know about more than I do because you are closely monitoring all these activities, even now. Okay? And then come the diplomacy. That is your own territory. Okay, here, China has strategy. They wanted to come across as they are the peacemakers. They are the mediator, not the fighters, not the warmongers like Americans. They are the peacemakers to the world. It's working in a certain ways. If you look at it, President Putin and President Xi Jinping talking about Ukraine after their friendship treaty, just they signed before the Winter Olympic. And then a couple of weeks later, Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay, we wrote about that one. If you are interested in, you can see the Sino-Russian agreement in the Harvard International Review. We talk about, soon after that happened, we wrote about that one, explaining what is the meaning behind that. Okay, here now they want to come across as not only the peacemaker, but also the commercial entrepreneur, commercial supporter, commercial investor, and a green nation. They are sending all the green technology to the other countries, especially to the Europe. And then more recently, they wanted to be the peacemaker in the Middle East, in the Gaza. They bring all the 14 different representatives from the Gaza and their associates to Beijing to tell the world, at least they are telling the world, we are the peacemaker, while the Israel and Americans are destroying Gaza. Okay, so they wanted to have a different cognitive warfare going on at the, and it is working. It is working, and also China wants to have a commercial diplomacy, especially with the European countries and the NATO countries. Okay, and they have, for example, Hungary, the country, and they have high technology bases, you know, batteries, other green technology is developed. It is also the NATO countries, the European Union. So Dr. Antonina can talk about more about that region. She's more of an expert on that. And also, and the NATO countries, for example, China has a good relationship with France. And France is the one who blocks the having the NATO headquarters, NATO office in Tokyo. So they use every possible way to slow down the NATO process or the European Union. Given that one, are using this electric technology, electric batteries vehicles and batteries in the European countries. That is the different kind of technology, different kind of strategies at work. And then the legal one. Dr. Antonina and I wrote about this report, Taiwan Participation in International Organization, which is available in my university, University of Warsaw. To Google it, entire report. It's a 80 some pages long, how China is doing into change the United Nations system inside. So here, they are trying to strategically put more Chinese in the leadership position in the UN system and friendly countries in the UN system, like Ethiopian former health minister is the head of the WHO, for example. He, for a while during the coronavirus or some called Wuhan virus, he spoke for the Chinese. Later on, they changed it. So you can see this is that they are trying to influence the inside. And then there are also they are only the personnel, but the first is to do the personnel, then use the policies inside. And then they are also using trying to lead the effort to the digital and artificially intelligent governance in the world. So you can see it is not one thing they are doing it. They are very comprehensive. It is midlife. And this is revised in UN documents, especially related to Taiwan, is in action even right now. So given that one, what is China's new identity? It is not the Middle Kingdom isolated in somewhere in the middle of Now China tell the world, hey, listen, Mr. America, we have a technology to go to the other side of the far side of the moon. Okay, it shows their technological power. And it gives the Beijing to have a purchasing power, global responsibility. It is a currency. And then it is space exploration, which I mentioned, far side of the moon. So given that one, this is the next one, financial aspect. Now, Chinese yuan, RMB, is one of the major currencies in the IMF and the World Bank currency basket. So they are, as you know, Central Bank of Sri Lanka also recognized as a form of exchange. Now they are doing other countries, not just one comprehensive strategy. Okay, now why they wanted to do it? This is the best way to avoid the economic sanction because the world economy runs by the US dollars. If they control the US dollars, the other countries can be paralyzed. If they stop all the US dollars to Sri Lanka is completely paralyzed. Your economy is run by the US dollars. So now China said, we need to get rid of that one. We can have the RMB replaced by the yuan. So like countries like Iran, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, they are also in a BRI transaction with the yuan. So this is the important part. This other strategy is the weakening the American power in the world. And now you probably know US put sanction on Cuba, China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela. You probably heard about the Venezuelan election right now, which is controversial. And now they wanted to put economic sanction. Now China can stop it in somehow because through the barter system or for the oil exchange for that. So given that one, this is just like your Colombo port. That's the only one in the Baltic Sea next to the Baltic countries. Okay, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Okay, it is next to the Belarus. And here they have economic activities going on in that part of the region. And through BI agreements, over 150 countries. And then there are ports and airports are the key trading hubs for China. Now they are already coming into the Europe, not only the Poland, but also the other countries in the Europe like Athens. Okay. And then what I call this one is peaceful war. Without fighting a war, China wants to win the war without fighting a battle. This is what I call the China's peaceful war. They might explain our previous article, Australian Outlook, was republished by the Australian Naval Institute, and they changed the name, which is appropriate, I think. It's China's peaceful war with the US. This is where you are. So now you know about why Sri Lanka is important, why they use the India to have chaos over there. They can focus on Sri Lanka. Why Taiwan over there and the other bootcane is Sri Lanka. If you control that island and this island, they have the Middle Kingdom back. They complete the regionalization. But they don't want to say, we want to take over Sri Lanka, a very independent country, has a long history of independence. But Taiwan is different circumstances because your phones, all the electronic things, about 70% is controlled by the Taiwan. semiconductor industry. Taiwan is like the Switzerland of Asia, much developed. People are much advanced in their mindset, their culture. We fall in love with the Taiwan people, not only each other, but also the Taiwan people. Okay, so you can see they have the country they want to take it back. Why? It's the semiconductor. Your phone, your computers, all is run by that. Our communication, talking to the around the world, 62 missions because of the semiconductor industry. When you prove that, you rule the world again. China wants to have it. So we have written on that subject about Taiwan, why they want to have a semiconductor industry. I have extensively written about it and give talks in the national defense universities both in Japan and in Taiwan and also in India about this aspect because they are more advanced than here. So I talk about why Taiwan is critically important to the world peace. So given that one, China's peaceful war with the US is that the strategy which I outlined here. So given that one, safe passage through China, through Red Sea, make it a very another strategic calculation. Why? Whenever the American ships go into the Red Sea, they attack the American and other ships, cargo ships, except Chinese, by the Houthis based in Lebanon. You probably heard about a few days ago that Israel forces attack Lebanon Houthis, the part of this operation to minimize the risk of. When all the Chinese ships are not attacked, they are passing through the Red Sea. When they reach those goods in Europe, they are much cheaper because of the transportation cost. But other ships have to go down south to the Cape Verde, down south of South Africa, around. It takes days and more expensive. So there is a price advantage. Chinese goods are much cheaper to the Europeans. They buy and undercut the economies. You see the other strategies? They think ahead. I can talk about how the Chinese decision-making process is done because I had the privilege to teach to some of the decision makers themselves while I was teaching in universities in Beijing and the other academies. So given this one, China has a price advantage in Europe that cannot compete. That's the economic aspect as I talk about. Then you don't have to have a war. You're already winning it. So given that, it is they are the underline for you. Oh, Chinese are the peacemakers, mediating the world peace. They are the benevolent investor in Sri Lanka, Hambantota, Colombo Port City, Colombo Port City, and others around the world. They are the good for humanity. That is working in your perception. That is how they control the mind. If you control the mind, you control the world. Okay, that what I call the China's comprehensive power projection. Okay, the comprehensive power projection in the northern ways very comprehensively, and the southern strategy, which I talk about in summary. It is a peaceful war. What kind of war now you are talking about? It is underlined, is the cognitive warfare. It's the war on your mind and your heart. Pardon me, even I'm Catholic, grew up in Buddhism. You probably know Mano Bubbanga Madhamma Manosetta Manomaya. mind is the forerunner of everything. Chinese learn from Sri Lanka in a Buddhist teaching. They are using into their action. If you control the mind, you control the world. If you want to be Arahat, control your mind. This is your gift to China and the world. Therefore, this is the Buddhist kingdom of the lion is still serving the Chinese strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Very comprehensive, in-depth. And of course, since you have a lot of knowledge in this region, I think our new colleagues and also our colleagues joining from online get kind of open eyes to this region that we are all learning, but still there are things that we have to grab from this kind of very professional lecture series that we are conducting. Sir, thank you very much. I think this will take another 20 to 25 minutes for question and answer sessions. Those who are joining from online, of course, you can test or either you can join directly. And first, I will open floor for our colleagues who are new. I mean, of course, they are having a series of lectures since last 6 weeks. Maybe they have some ideas about that. Also some questions even from previous lectures that they have in their mind to more, I mean, related to this topic. So open floor to you. Please get maximum benefit from the professor since he is here for you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Professor, first of all, thank you very much for spending your valuable time with us. So my question is regarding, it's actually about the semiconductor relationship. So the Taiwanese influence is driven by TSMC, obviously, with being the biggest contributor for the chip manufacturing. Do you think the interest of the United States that the United States has of Taiwan would waver in a situation where the US is able to create a more resilient supply chain for its own semiconductors? Because as you know, obviously, President Biden was, his legislature really pushed US companies to, reshore into the US. Intel is investing heavily, AMD is doing the same. So do you think that perhaps the interest in Taiwan would waver in such a situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent question. Before that, two comments. I wanted to say thank you to Mahinda in Washington and his team, Rohan and Chaturi. Thank you very much. And also, I wanted to tell you all these ideas and thoughts I'm sharing with you as my own personal capacity, not American diplomat or the military officials of the Pentagon. Okay, it's a personal reflection, and as we are scholars, at the same time, one leg is on the other side, and other leg is the academia side. So, coming back to your question, excellent one. What is your name again?
Ravin Ubesekar.
Ravin.
Correct.
Thank you, Ravin. US government, because of this situation, because of the primacy of Taiwan, not only the high technology, but also their per capita income and the purchasing power and the high development, and also the history. They wanted to protect Taiwan. I tell you the story when General Douglas MacArthur, after World War II, said, Taiwan needs to be protected. It is the unsinkable aircraft carrier for the Americans. Why? Because they don't want to Soviet Union and the communist China fall into the Southeast Asia and to take over the entire Asia into the communism. So in order to protect the unwanted top, and Taiwan should be Americans and protected. It's called the unsinkable aircraft carrier. I also wrote about it with Dr. Antonina in the Johns Hopkins University publication. There are not only the one unsinkable aircraft carrier, there are two unsinkable aircraft carriers. One is Taiwan, other one is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, why? Because of the Hambantota, Colombo port, and other investment, and the Chinese spy operation in this country, even some buildings around the government. Okay, and even the Buddhist temples. Okay, so given this, Sri Lanka recognizes that, not Sri Lanka, the United States recognizes that Taiwan must be protected at all cost. One reason is the history, other one is the shining example of that democracy. It is a remarkably active, shining example to the world. Okay, so if the Chinese were to attack Ravin, they are going to take over the country and they would not destroy Taiwan, because you don't want to own a cemetery. You wanted to have the brain power of Taiwanese people. They are the brain trust. So instead to protect that technology, what America is doing is they are starting the semiconductor industry in Wisconsin, one. Another one is Arizona and Colorado, and now they are building in Germany, am I right? Germany, and that's one for the European Union, and other one in Japan. So they are decentralizing. In case they were attacked, actually they have a semiconductor industry preserved elsewhere, because that runs the world. Okay, so that's another strategy that the US government is promoting and wanted to have the more exchange. There are a number of legislation passed by the US Congress. We have written about all the legislations, and some have implication for Sri Lanka. Like, for example, Taipei Act has implication for this building, which you probably not aware of it, and that can be exercised at any moment, because it's the US laws to punch on the any government that would not support Taiwan. So that was the Taipei Act. You can Google it up, what that's the implication for Sri Lanka or this building, for example. So therefore, you can see US government put the high priority, not only the diplomatic effort or the military efforts, which we have interaction, and also the educational exchanges, like myself going to Taiwan, teach, and going back and forth. I traveled to, for example, China more than 100 times, and to Taiwan more than 20, 30 times back and forth. So we have a lot of exchanges going on back in the US and Taiwan right now. So given that one, not only the educational, military, and diplomacy, now the US law itself forced the American diplomat to act and behave in a certain ways in favor of Taiwan. So therefore, to understand that one, how it is going to impact you here, please read the Taipei Act. Taiwan's capital Taipei. You can say Taipei Act. We wrote about it, that one, some time back when it came back. It is the hidden messages there for the US diplomat can exercise this around the world, and that impact your USAID money, and also military aid to this country, and also the exchange programs for Sri Lanka. So this is the way that the US government itself recognized. It is not the diplomatic, military, and to cultural exchanges or educational exchanges. US laws impose that we need to protect Taiwan. It is what we call the ambiguous policy, but it is not really ambiguous anymore. Very, very, very real when you look at all the legislation passed by the US Congress. Thank you, Ravi. Yes, madam.
Thank you so much, Professor, for the instrumental lecture. Yeah. So my question is, Professor, related to how we could perceive the difference between the treatment when you mention about the China's Buddhist doctrine and related to the diplomacy, but it kind of contrasts with their treatment towards Tibetan Buddhists who are currently living inside China and also destroying the Tibetan related Buddhist monasteries and motifs. So how could we perceive this, Professor?
Thank you very much. What is your name, madam?
Purnima.
Purnima. Beautiful name.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes. Purnima, you raised a very good question. Actually, Dr. Antonina can expound on that one because she is an expert on Dharmasala. Would you mind expand on that one, Tibetan? You probably know Dalai Lama cannot come here. Why? Because you are a vassal state to begin. Your foreign policy is not non-aligned or independent. You are not even a Sri Lankan. You cannot have an independent foreign policy. You are not a free country. You have to get the permission even to ask the Dalai Lama to come to. It's a Buddhist figure. Pope can come over here. Okay, so that's another part. So I'll let Dr. Antonina to expound on that question, Purnima. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, dear Purnima. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. So I don't want to take too much of this time because it's my husband's lecture. But just as a quick comment, indeed, well, one thing is ideas and values. Another thing is instrumentalization of those ideas and values and using them as a tool for soft power for very, very practical ends, right? In fact, Sri Lanka is not the only country where China has been applying the so-called Buddhist diplomacy. India is another case, right? Interestingly, in relationship between India and China, in a way, if you think about the Buddhist context, China is the little brother of India, right? Because technically, India is where Buddhism was born. Well, technically, it's present-day Nepal, right, where Buddha was born, but let's say it was a part of this great Indian civilization. So I think it's fair enough to say that in the context of Buddhism, India is the older brother, China is the younger brother. However, China has been trying to twist this narrative. I don't know if you have ever heard of the movie called Xuanzang. Xuanzang, just like this Chinese monk who went to India and never made it to Sri Lanka. It was one of the few joint Chinese-Indian movie productions in this short period of time when Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping were trying to develop very friendly, open a new chapter of China-India relations. We all know very well it failed in 2020 with the Galvan Valley crisis, and now we can really see the downward spiral of China-India relations. But a few years back, they were really trying to use soft power to build a positive image of China-India relations. And in that movie, Xuanzang comes to India. He participates in a debate, a Buddhist debate organized by King Harshavardhana, with whom, historically speaking, he had a very good relationship. And in his travelogue, he wrote highly, very nicely of King Harshavardhana. Actually, some say that it was the first, Xuanzang enabled the first diplomatic relationship between civilization of India and the Chinese emperor. Thanks to that, his stay and his linkage. And in the end of this debate, we learned in this movie, Chinese-Indian film production, that Mahayana won over Hinayana. They don't even call it Theravada tradition, right? They call it Hinayana, right? Mahayana, big, Hinayana, small, right? So you can see even the words matter. This is also something that my husband has been stressing, right? How you call Indian Ocean the Western Ocean. You call it Hinayana, not Theravada, right? To again show a different relationship, twist this relationship. So why am I giving you this example? To show, again, that things such as values, ideas, philosophies, religions can be, unfortunately, used or abused for political reasons, ideological reasons. They have nothing to do with reality. but they are being used for political ends, right? So this is, if you will, my answer to your question about this hypocrisy, right? Because you are very correct to observe that it's different when you look at big words of diplomats and politicians, and very different reality on the ground in Tibet, as you said, right? Because Patrick was also mentioning the water projects on Brahmaputra River. For example, they are the ones of which many monasteries, historical monasteries, were destroyed retrievably in Tibet, right? Thousands of people had to be relocated, and they even deeper poverty because of that, despite of what Chinese government is officially telling us, right? So we do see this double-faced reality. Thank you.
I hope you got the idea why is it.
Yes, Professor. So as Antonia miscorrectly mentioned, like it's the ideological difference and the reality in a check. So in a way, we need to kindly have a closer look at what is plain in the ground as well as here in the words that has been narrated down as well. So yeah, kindly rightly understood.
Yeah. I will tell you, since I came over here, I knew I was talking to some of the Buddhist key monks whom I have a personal relationship. He said, "Mama Singalen kata karana එක මහත්තයා ඒ චීනය අය අපිට ඇවිල්ලා සල්ලි එහෙම දීලා යනවා. නමුත් එයාලා කියනවා මේ ටිබෙට් එක්කෙනාව එක්කගෙන එන්න එපා කියලා අපිට කියනවලු. Right? So this is the kind of thing, the gentle way of the Chinese missions are doing this one. To the some monks gladly accept that donations. And you probably know they are translating some books in the down south. You probably know about that one. This is cognitive warfare. Okay, well, everybody likes to have a Sinhala books and Buddhist books translated into Sinhala and talk about great Sinhalese civilization. Swan Sen and Park Sheeran and Admiral Chung He came over here, and all the great things China has done. At the same time, they are very strategic about conveying what they need to be doing about the Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan leader coming over here. And the other part is other strategy is China is supporting giving boats to the Jaffna fishermen. And that was another thing that China is doing, which is good for the upliftment of the fishermen in Jaffna and the northern peninsula, and also the eastern part. So because their life is getting better. Okay, so at the same time, this is a part of that cognitive warfare. You cannot argue negatively about it. You know, who is going to argue about negative about Lotus Tower? You cannot argue about when you translate Buddhist texts into Sinhalese. You see, this is the cleverness. So now when you think about in the process, you are part of them. They will tell you that their ideology in your head. They are going to win your mind and the hearts. You need to think like them, act like them. The question is, if you are born free, you want to die free, and you want to live a life free, can express, you can criticize your government over here, just like I can criticize my president even. I will survive following morning. I'm not worried about ending up a jail or anything. Even in Sri Lanka, you have that democratic freedom. When that is with it, and you also wanted to live with it.
Any questions from our colleagues joining online?
So Suminda wants to talk.
Yes, Sominder, please go ahead.
Suminda, go ahead.
Good morning. Hope you all can hear me. Thank you, Professor, for the presentation. My question is that as you mentioned in the presentation, what I understood that the China has already activated its wings to overcome overarching the Belt and Road initiatives, including Sri Lanka. So yes, I agree with some extent, and that I was able to listen your interview had with Frank Neville as well, that your thoughts on Hamiltonian and Jeffersonian thoughts, how that China and the US develop their own kind of civilization and economic relations. But when we go back to the kind of other academic thoughts, like especially from Australian origin academic thought, like Rory Medcalf's really kind of really persuading Indo-Pacific concept, which that the quadrilateral nations, including US, controlling that China's activities in the Indian and the Pacific Ocean. So we can see that both kind of wars or proxy wars or other kind of contestations happening. So how you can articulate in the foreign policy aspect of Sri Lanka? So we know that in the both side, China and the US having kind of trade and other kind of contestation. How Sri Lanka can be benefited within that this kind of contest, and what kind of foreign policy we have to be think about, because especially that as you mentioned that Hambantota Port, usually that Western scholars nominated or name is a kind of debt trap diplomacy. So Hambantota Port is always cited as a tool of debt trap diplomacy by China. So within that kind of thing, so other narratives also there. So what is your opinion, how the Sri Lankan foreign policy should be aligned with the Indo-Pacific concept, or are you inclined to that, or you are not really kind of not inclined to the Indo-Pacific? What's going on? Thank you.
Thank you, Suminda. Excellent question. And one thing I do not want to do is I don't want to talk about the domestic politics because that's not my place, even though I'm fully aware of what is going on. I say internal politics is your thinking. And let me give you a couple observations, what I think. In America and China, you can see China's foreign policy right now and the BRI, their strategies. What is the paramount driver? What is the paramount driver for China? It's a national rejuvenation, revival of China, national rejuvenation. What is the America's paramount motivation? Freedom for all. Rule-based world, free world, democratic world. And that's why we call the rule-based free and open navigation system we need to have in the Pacific region. That's the US policy. Controlled by the artificial islands. So both countries, if you were to look at it also the Singapore and also Dubai. What is their policies? Their policy is the national policy. National rejuvenation. What is the Sri Lanka's policies in the past few years? It's called the private or the family rejuvenation. For the few people in the country, they want to be rejuvenation. There is no national rejuvenation. This is the family rejuvenation. If you can change the few people in the country rules and they are become wealthy and powerful, then you need to think about the larger question. Do you want to have a national rejuvenation of Sri Lanka or the private rejuvenation for down south or elsewhere and the foreign bank accounts? Ask that question. If you read the newspapers, they will tell you where the money is, but nobody is acting it. Why? Because like a tentacle of the octopus, they spread it out to other private interest, not the national interest. The political system need to rethink. I heard about, no sir, we need to have a system change. So we need to ask, learn from China, or American, Singaporean, Dubai, what they put forward for national rejuvenation, national revival. What you need is the national revival, not the private revival. Because I saw the other day a wife of one politician coming in a bulletproof cars. 7 armed services are guarding her. I say to my world, how much money you spend on that one? So this is a national rejuvenation. If it is a first lady, it is a different story. She is not the first lady even. So this is the kind of a country. This is one of the person came to me and in the military says, come here, sir, look at that car. I said, what is that about? Oh, that car is bulletproof. Did you see this guy in the white shirts? They are all the bodyguards for her. I said, really? Oh, wow. So I recognize the person. So this is what I consider you need to ask that question. Don't try to tell the Chinese or the Americans how to run their country. To have a national rejuvenation for this nation. This nation has the history from King Parakambahu. That's my king, by the way. So there are great kings that you can look back to. The second one, to Suminda, your other question, I want to leave this one. When you have this competition coming from the major powers, whether it is Americans, the Chinese, or your northern big brother, as he said, or big sister. So this is how minds, whether a Chinese, Indian. I ask you to think what Mahatma Gandhi said. This is very applicable to this island paradise or the Buddhist kingdom of the lion at Pakshian and or the Dharma Deepa that Swan Sen said. Gandhi said, let the winds go through the windows and the doors of my house, but don't let them to blow away my house. I'm asking you, don't sell the country. Let them come and go. That's what had happened before anyway. Portuguese came, Dutch came, and English came. They gave you a baila and cricket. You are still enjoying it. But the thing is, You enjoy it, but don't sell the country to foreigners. This is your land. You never become a Singaporean. You never become a Dubai. This is the much greater land. That's why Buddha, King Emperor Asoka sent his son and daughter over here. If they can recognize the importance of this land, Parkshian can recognize the importance of this land, Swanseng can say Dharmadeepa. Why can't you? Again, let the national pride go, not the private grandeur. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Professor. Before wrap up sessions, I think one of our colleagues overseas waiting. Yes, it is for you to Chaturi Pereira from Washington, D.C. Please raise your question.
Oh, is it
Yes.
our friend Chaturi? Oh,
Yes.
hi, Chaturi.
Am I audible, ma'am? Am I audible, ma'am?
Can you speak, Chaturi, a little bit?
Okay. First of all, on behalf of the Ambassador and Deputy Chief of Mission, I extend our gratitude to you, Professor Mendis and Dr. Antonina, for acknowledging our request to conduct this seminar. Yeah, this is all. Am I audible?
Chaturi,
Line is not
can you
clear, Chaturi. Can you?
hold the microphone closer to the mouth?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I audible now?
It's better. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, let me come up with again. First of all, on behalf of the Ambassador and Deputy Chief of Mission, I extend our gratitude to you, Professor Mendis, and to Dr. Antonina for acknowledging our request to conduct this seminar for Sri Lanka Foreign Service officers. We actually value your time and effort, and I believe that all the participants resonate with me. in this
Chaturi, can
regard.
you repeat again? It's not clear. I think now getting better. Can you repeat it again?
Am I audible now? Is it still? Am I audible?
Yes, Chaturi, little bit okay, but try to talk mic.
Is it fine? Am I audible?
Hello.
Am I audible?
Yeah, Chaturi,
Am I audible?
call through WhatsApp. We can get the questions.
Call her and yeah, I don't.
Yes, Chaturi.
Yeah, and Chaturi.
Yes, Professor Mendis, I must thank you and Dr. Antonina for acknowledging our request to conduct this seminar for service officers, those who are in Colombo as well as missions abroad. I hope it's a great success, including the participation of several ambassadors, consul generals, and many more commercial and defense attaches. So apart from that, I have gone through all the articles that Dr. Anthony and you have taken down, especially regarding blue dragon strategy and red thread strategy. Second thing, what do you think about the latest development of Quad, especially regarding the joint statement released yesterday? So you may refer to the thing that you have already mentioned about two unsinkable aircraft carriers. I would like to quote a sentence from there. The degree of strategic autonomy these islands nations really determine their ability to deal with the PRI and IPS as independent countries. So, sir, if you could explain us how Sri Lanka can navigate our strategic autonomy for the benefit of national interest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chaudhary. Thank you again, and also convey our sincere thanks to Mahinda and Rohana, and also yourself coordinating everything with our friend here. It was very honored to come here, and it was great for Mahinda to think about it and use us to come and benefit to the country and our future leaders of this nation, especially the frontline diplomats. The question about just focus on the two unsinkable aircraft carriers, which I talk about some of our articles. There are two different strategies, as I mentioned. One is Taiwan has a very aggressive, cohesive, threatening kind of militaristic approach by China to Taiwan. There are military ships going on every single day, aircraft carriers, and so forth. At the same time, the US aircraft carriers going through the Taiwan Strait, because that's the international water. And also the China now with the Philippines are working together as a partnership in order to address this issue, in case there were any kind of conflict erupts. And that's why the US is partnership with the American allies, South Korea, Japan, India, and also the Australia, the Quad. So that's that part of, because this is a high tension region right now. Every single day, people of Taiwan living in a constant fear. If something happen, even though that's the fear is a part of the strategy, but in my view, I do not think they are going to have a large-scale warfare and killing field going to happen, because nobody wants to have a cemetery. Okay, that's what happened with Afghanistan. Nobody win throughout the history of Afghanistan. Foreign countries, this become a cemetery. And it is still pretty much the isolated country. So therefore, that's the strategy. Coming to the second aircraft carrier of Sri Lanka, which I mentioned about because of the recent activities and the development with the Hambantota. And Sri Lanka is pretty much become a vassal states of China. Because I can give you numerous stories. I work with the previous foreign secretary over here, dear friend of mine. He told me, Machang, I cannot do that. Why? I said, well, the Chinese foreign minister called me. I see. Really? Yep. I said, that's why I don't want to talk about it. Thank you. So this is how it works. Okay. It is also not over here. China does that one to Singapore too. When I was working back and forth with the Sri Lankan Encyclopedia of Diaspora, the big book we wrote about Sri Lankan diaspora, I was going back and forth with the National Singapore University, and I learned a lot of things, Chinese influence on the Singapore, because that different context and historical context. But come to Sri Lanka is different, because this is an independent, self-supporting, self-prosperous country, not unlike Singapore. Singapore is completely depend on Malaysia, the water to the vegetables to all the food and everything. And Dubai cannot survive without foreign food and water and everything else. Sri Lanka, I guarantee you, you will be survived even there is cut off everything. Okay, because you have the enough food to survive here. Okay, don't tell this one that Dudley Sirisena about I said that one. He wanted to increase the price of rice. So having this one, I'm just joking, Dudley, if you're hearing. So bottom line is Sri Lanka can be an independent sovereign country. And I would like to see it that way, because it does not need to be aligned with anything, because we call it a non-aligned. Non-aligned is a nonsense, because we never been non-aligned. Either we part of the China or the Russia, or the during J.R. Jayawardena's time onward, pro-American capitalistic economy and relations improved. So we are not non-aligned. Okay, it's a name only. And then I think President Sirisena's time is talk about Asia-centric foreign policy. It is what a nonsense about it. Major export is going to Europe and to Americans. Your foreign exchange coming from Americans. Textile and other exports from Europe. What do you export to China? Tea? Of course, they have a Dilma tea. Every Chinese hotel, five-star hotel, Dilma tea is there everywhere in the world. But you don't have anything to export. Of course, they have a tourist coming over here. But your foreign exchange coming from largely tea, rubber, not much coconut, and tourism, and to the textile export to the Western countries. You cannot have Asia-centric foreign policy. It's just I'm saying I want to have a Polonnaruwa-centric kingdom. Okay? Because I'm from there. You know what kind of nonsense it is. So I'm not criticizing about the people, but I'm criticizing about the policies. You need to have a policy, not a personal oriented, but what you need to have a policies, national oriented, that you are the center, not the one family or one leader. This is the problem. That is why, like for example, President Xi Jinping, he was wanted to be a national hero, not the family hero. Now, some leaders in this country, they don't have a national hero. They had it after the war. Now they have a family heroes because family can survive for generations without work, but at your expense when you are dead into the other countries. So that is what I think is not about America's unthinkable aircraft carriers or the Chinese, but US need to have its own spine to stand up and to put the national policy forward, nation first. Think about Vihara Mahadevis or the great kings of this nation. So that's the Chaturya and kind of my short answer. We need to learn from the Americans, Chinese, and other countries. We need to put the nation, Sri Lankan first, not the one family or the one group of people who rules the country. That's where we go wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are now going to conclude today's sessions. Almost 2 and 15 minutes that I take grab from your time, more than 2 hours. I think, dear colleagues, Professor has taken you in kind of very peak thinkable situations where we are in the global and what Sri Lanka is important in this region and our relations beyond region, of course. And please put your hand together to appreciate Professor Mendis and Brother Mendis. Thank you very much. And of course, during our pre-discussions, Professor said that he has had a few mentors from Sri Lanka. Some of them are already passed away, only available one.
Dr. A.T.R. Ratna was I call him Aryaya. I usually stay at Sarvodaya last 4 decades whenever I come. So Aryaya passed away. Sadly, and I came to visit him before his passing. And another dear friend and mentor to me is Ambassador Jayantha Dhanapala. We knew him, I knew him since 1986 when I was Sri Lankan Youth Ambassador to United Nations. I had a privilege to work with him. And then he became ambassador in Washington. I met him and he stayed in his house. Then he came and he stayed with me back in Minnesota. Then he ran for the UN Secretary General position that I tried to help him at Kofi Annan. Also, he studied in Minnesota. He became because US supported him, not Jayantha. So he became a Secretary General. Otherwise, Jayantha would have been a great Secretary General for the United Nations. But Kofi Annan appointed him under Secretary General of Disarmament Affairs. So I had the privilege to go and meet him when I was in the US delegation to the UN. So I met with Jayantha and just talk about family and like that. So I really miss them. And Jayantha was a great hero to many of you. And even Ravinath Karyavasam and Ravinath Arya Singh, they all tell you, even Tusant Vijayman, all of my dear friends will tell you how great human being, not ambassador, but a human being as a friend. He can be the great example to this nation, like A.T.R. Ratna. And then other one only living meant I have is Dr. Karunasena Kodituakko, my former vice chancellor. I met him in Japan and in South Korea. And I visited him and stayed with him in Japan, China. Karu was yesterday with her lecture at the Royal Asiatic Society. Dr. Karunasena Kodituakko came and we had a nice time. She came to listen to her lecture about the India-China, Sri Lanka relation. So I still have one mentor left, and day after tomorrow, I'm going to see my high school teachers. There are 3 left. I'm meeting with Kadawata on my way to meeting with Dambulla Lokuhamaduro. So then to Mihintale, then to Trincomalee, then back to Isromunia, and then to Esalapurahara. So that's what's my nutshell of my trip. Even supposed to be a vacation, but it's a working vacation. Thanks to my friend Mahinda asking me to do this one. I think this is a very fruitful exercise, and I'm very happy to be part of your life. And remember, you are the future. And when you go to the post abroad, be humble and think that you don't know Sri Lanka. The reason is because the people you meet probably has written a PhD on Sri Lankan history, Sri Lankan economic policy, and they probably speak Sinhalese better than I do, and you do. I tell you because I taught in China, and a Chinese student in a Beijing Culture University who are learning Sinhalese and Buddhism, Kalaniya University, and their Sinhalese is absolutely better than me. They call me Mahatya. ඔයාගේ සිංහල ඔච්චර හොඳ නෑනේ. I'm telling them, they are Sinhala talking to me. I gave a talk at the Kalaniya University in Sinhala. Actually, their Sinhalese is much better than me. There are also trained 20 to 30 Chinese students to learn Sinhala. So you can see the long-term plan. Pretty soon, Chinese I speak in Sinhala, and also I predicted in my writing, when 2049 comes, you may have a Chinese president here in this country. But you have also Kumarikawa, Chinese descendant of the Parakamba of the 6th in Guangzhou province, who came over here, met with your speaker, Karuja Surya. So do not underestimate, you might have a Chinese president here, just like Great Britain have an Indian prime minister, most likely in the US also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Actually, I just wanted to invite you to please follow this article. Now you know who you are and what you can get. This is future of foreign service, of course. Starting from today, I propose you to be a mentor. I mean, have a mentor like professor in the future for your academic or as well as professional career. Of course, I hope that you will help, of course, all of us. If necessary, if possible, we will have another lecture or kind of invitation, maybe in person or not only okay. I mean, if possible, online. So thank you so much. Indeed, of course, entire Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the entire Foreign Service officers representing today. And of course, we are going to circulate this video to other officers who may not able to join today due to their respective divisions, activities, and missions day-to-day routines. We will send you all video. Please. Meantime, if you allow me, sir, I can share your email address. If they have any questions, we will ask them to directly forward or forward it to us, and then I can coordinate with you. Thank you so much, and I will wish you all the very best in your other program in Sri Lanka and also your future endeavors. And thank you so much, and indeed, it's a great pleasure to receive you today and had a very fruitful, in-depth, insightful lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Washington.
So we will now move photograph.
Sure.
We will go to staircase.
Yeah, they are good.